What's going on, guys? Good morning. Welcome back to United View. Hope everyone is doing very well, having a good Wednesday morning. We're back 9:16 a.m. settings with another transfer view. We've got actually some new people to talk about today. Previously, we've been spending the last few days talking about Frankie de Jong, Darwin Núñez, Jurrien Timber. We've got new people to talk about today. It's called the transfer view. It might as well be called the centre-back view this morning, or the defender view this morning, because we're talking a lot about centre-backs, because Manchester United have been linked to, count them, 1, 2, 3 separate centre-backs this morning. So we're going to get into all of those, the valuations, the likelihood of them happening. What does it mean when it comes to a potential Jurrien Timber deal as well? Are we looking at these new centre-back targets because the Jurrien Timber deal has gone very cold? We'll talk about that. We're going to talk about Garnacho as well. His contract comes up in a year's time, and possibly it looks like Paul Pogba's going to sign with Juventus, but could Garnacho be signing with Juventus in a year's time as well? We'll touch on that. Plus, we're going to talk about Louis van Gaal's comments about Manchester United, the leadership team, the leadership structure, how it's changed from his time there to Erik ten Hag's current tenure at Manchester United. And since this is the centre-back view this morning, we're going to talk about Pau Torres and him possibly being linked to a club that isn't Manchester United and what that means as well. So there's plenty to get into. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner as well. I can see you all in the live chat. Jadon Sancho, the real one, maybe, says OWEN view settings. It's transfer view settings. It's defender view settings this morning. Starlord says top of the morning, OWEN. We've got VK saying greetings, OWEN, and everyone from Bangkok. So yes, we're going to be going there in the summer, of course. Pre-season tour, Manchester United are. That's very exciting too. But let's start off talking about Alessandro Bastoni, Inter Milan's centre-back. Manchester United have been linked with him over the course of the last 24 hours by multiple outlets, both domestic and foreign. So you've got Simon Jones of the Daily Mail saying that Manchester United have inquired about Alessandro Bastoni. Inter Milan value him at around £50 million. Now, as I mentioned, it's not just the domestic journalists, it's also foreign journalists as well, such as Gianluca Damasio, of course, based over there in Italy, is saying that as of last night, he said this was around sort of 8, 9 o'clock our time. As you can see on the screen right there, you can see some stats about Bastoni, 23 years of age. Of course, he's currently at Inter Milan. Centre-back, the reported fee, as I mentioned, from outlets based over here in the UK are saying around 50 million, which is a little bit more expensive than what we're going for Jurrien Timber, but you could argue Bastoni's more established. He's won a league title in the last couple of years. He's Italian international as well. I don't even want to bring up Euro 2020, but there you go. But as I mentioned, in the last 24 hours, Gianluca Damasio is also saying that Manchester United have made a move for Bastoni. In addition, though, to Manchester United, we're not the only club that's currently in for this player. In addition to Tottenham, Manchester United have been moving for Inter Milan's Alessandro Bastoni in the last 24 hours or so. Now, what's really interesting about this one, guys, is I think it speaks volumes to what is going on with this Jurrien Timber deal at the moment. It was very obvious for the last couple of weeks or so, wasn't it, that Jurrien Timber was Manchester United and Erik ten Hag's primary target when it came to centre-back options. Now, so many centre-backs we're going to talk about today. You could say, well, Owen, does this mean we're going after 2 centre-backs? Are we going to sign 2 centre-backs this summer? And given the likely departures of your Phil Jones and your Eric Bailly, you could say maybe we could be going after a couple of centre-backs, but I think the most likely situation is that we only sign 1 centre-back this summer. I do think we're going to sign 4 or 5 players, but I think if you look at all of the positions we need to sign for, it's centre-back, it's central midfield, it's a striker, possibly a fullback, and if we're going to get a second player for a second position, it probably would be that midfield area. I think that's the area that needs the most work. So I think we're going to only sign 1 centre-back, but I think being linked to so many centre-backs over the course of the last 24 hours is Manchester United going, actually, you know what? Timber does have reservations. He does have doubts about... We've heard it. We've read it in the last week or so, haven't we, of... He's worried about what does my future look like when it comes to the Dutch national team with the World Cup at the end of the year. And if I do go to Manchester United, how often am I going to be playing? I don't want to have a Donny van de Beek situation happen to me at United and then I miss out what's a huge opportunity in my career. And because of those doubts, maybe him and his representatives and maybe Ajax as well have said to Manchester United, look, we're going to offer him a new contract and we feel pretty confident he's going to stay. And because of that, United have gone, wow, we need to be looking at other targets. Now, thankfully, it would appear that we have several other targets, one of them whom is Alessandro Bastoni. Alternatives are a good thing. I think they are absolutely a good thing. I think so many times, and we've spoken about this in the last couple of days when it comes to Frankie de Jong, right? Are we going to be chasing this guy all summer? Are we going to have this transfer saga all summer? Is it going to be the same old Manchester United chasing a player that doesn't want to come to United? And we'll touch on that in a little while, but we need to be quite proactive this summer. If we're in negotiations with a player, or if we want a player and that player's going, maybe, would I be playing, and what's my position going to be look like? You could argue that's a crisis of confidence in his own ability. Back yourself. If you're going to go to Manchester United, assume you're going to play, or at least in the negotiations, ask Erik ten Hag or ask John Murtough, how much am I going to be playing? But okay, if he's having doubts, United need to go, look, we can't waste time. We can't afford to be we're chasing one player this summer in Frankie de Jong, but we're not willing to chase all of these other players because we just don't have the time. There is too much work to do. You can't be committed to a rebuild and just focused on one brick. We're just going to focus on that one at a time. No, we need to be doing multiple things at a time here. So alternatives aren't a bad thing as well. Now, when it comes to Bastoni, what's the likelihood of us actually signing him? Try my best not to be negative, okay? Try my best not to be negative when it comes to transfers. It's a bit like the Christian Eriksen situation, I feel, unfortunately, because all indications would say Tottenham have to be the favourites in that situation. And again, I say it's very similar to the Christian Eriksen situation, right? You've got a player here that would probably want to be playing Champions League football. If he stays at Inter Milan, he's playing Champions League football, right? They finished second in Serie A last season. So if he stays at Inter, they're playing Champions League football. So he's going to want to stick on that kind of level. Well, Tottenham have Champions League football. Who's the coach of Tottenham? Antonio Conte, his former coach at Inter Milan, of which he won Serie A with. It just all points there, doesn't it? It just all points at that they would be in a pole position. Now, that doesn't make it a guarantee, of course. Maybe Bastoni goes, that would be the easy move for me, and maybe I want to try something different. Maybe I want to go to Manchester United. But for me, that does feel somewhat unlikely. You could even argue, and United have fallen victim to this. Lord knows how many times United have fallen victim to this kind of situation whereby Bastoni wants to get this transfer deal done. His agents want to get him the best deal possible. We know that Daniel Levy at Spurs can be a tough negotiator, putting it lightly. I know that it's been reported that they've got like 150 million or 150 million cash injection at Spurs, so they will have money to spend this summer, and Conte's going to be backed or what have you. But make no mistake, Daniel Levy will haggle, and he has done so very well. And usually he gets his way when it comes to transfer fees and things of that nature. So maybe it could be a situation of Inter maybe not getting the price that they want from Spurs, or Bastoni not getting the wages that he wants, or his agents want rather, in that deal. And then they're going, look, Man United are interested. Man United are interested in him. And you know the situation they're in, and you know the situation when it comes to their negotiating prowess. They'll pay the money. They'll pay the wages. So if I were you, Spurs, I'd pay up now, because United will come in. And in reality, in his own head, in the back of his mind, he's going, I'm not going to United. You kidding me? They were rubbish last season. You know, they're in the Europa League. Who knows when they'll be back in the Champions League? That's not happening. So that could be the situation there. It could just be a case of pure leverage. And as I mentioned, how many times have Manchester United been burnt when it comes to that? So I would be surprised. But in terms of the player profile, I've spoken about this a couple of times recently. When it comes to the player profile of the type of player that myself, I hope that Manchester United are looking for this summer, that's the kind of the player profile you'd be hoping. Early 20s, still, established though, still has achieved things around sort of a 40, 50, 30 million price tag. That's how you can get a few players in of a certain element of quality. But as I mentioned, I hear this in the last 24 hours. I see those reports, and it is positive that it comes from both domestic and foreign journalists. It definitely means there's something to it. But if you ask me for the likelihood, I would be, if I had to rate this one out of 10 in terms of a likelihood of this one happening, I'd go for like a 4, maybe. And to be honest, I'm happy to be clipped on that one because I would really like a Bastoni to come in at United, but I'm not sure on that one. But if it's not going to be Bastoni, one person it could be is Sven Botman. I mentioned this was going to be the centre-back view. I mentioned this was going to be the defender view this morning, and we've been linked to so many centre-backs over the course of the last day. So again, this one comes out of Italy as well. The same source, Gianluca Damasio, saying that Manchester United are among clubs who have a strong interest in Sven Botman. Now, Lille want a fee of around 40 to 45 million euros for the defender. And, I mean, it's really same principles, I suppose, isn't it, of the Bastoni deal? In that, one, it shines major doubt on the Jurrien Timber deal. Because if Manchester United are just looking at, as I mentioned, if it was just this morning and I came on and I said Manchester United are interested in Bastoni, you would go, okay, I thought we were going after Timber, and Bastoni's been linked to Spurs, and it could just be a game of a negotiating tactic from Bastoni or from Inter Milan or from whoever. But in reality, the fact that we've been linked to so many centre-backs really does give that impression of United are going, we've got to look around. We have to look around. We have to look at alternatives. You can see Botman's stats on the screen right there. Again, similar kind of profile to Bastoni, 22 years of age, currently at Lille. Obviously a centre-back, and again, that fee of around 40 million euros. Again, it's the player profile that I like. It's the player profile that I'm looking for Manchester United to sign this summer. Now, he has been linked to several clubs, which, again, I've spoken about this before, in that there does generally seem to be a pool of players, isn't there? In every transfer window, there's this pool of players that come the end of the window, it's highly likely that they will be at another club. You know, this year's pool of players includes the likes of Darwin Núñez. It includes the likes of maybe Mane, but those kind of players that are just constantly being linked to everyone, and eventually they will be going somewhere. And it would appear that Botman is one of those players. He's been linked in January. He was linked quite heavily to Newcastle at the time, but it was one of those ones in January, wasn't it, whereby Newcastle were after a lot of players, but they could only really get a certain profile of player because at the time they were in that relegation, battle, and it wasn't a certain thing that they were going to be staying in the Premier League. And sort of the more established players or players that had a bit of a bigger reputation were saying, well, money's great, but I do really actually want to be playing Premier League football. Forget European football. I want to be playing Premier League football. So, of course, that didn't happen. Also reports that AC Milan are interested in Botman as well. And again, that might be an interesting alternative for him there as well, because of course they just won Serie A. They're going to be in the Champions League next season. They were linked. Milan were linked to Eric Bailly in January, and of course that didn't happen as well. So certainly there is competition for him. But as I mentioned before, I do think it's the right profile of player. I do think that if you ask me to compare this one to maybe the Bastoni deal, I think this one's far more likely at happening. I think you have to look at, if we're doing the tick box exercise here, you would say, okay, how does it tick all the right boxes here? Oh, well, Dutch. We're linked to every Dutch player, so it makes sense that whilst they're all on international duty and they're all together, that they're talking about, oh, actually, maybe Botman's an interesting one. Maybe he's talking to Donny. Maybe he's talking to Frankie. Maybe he's talking to all of these players. Can you imagine that? How many Dutch players we would have at Manchester United by the end of the summer? We could potentially have Botman, Frankie de Jong, Donny van der Beek, Erik ten Hag. It'd be a Dutch revolution at Manchester United. And maybe you could say it's just lazy journalism, Owen. It's just because he's Dutch and he might be available this summer. That's the only reason we're linked to him. But again, I think he's of that pool of players that is available for transfer this summer. And if we're looking at people not being open to coming to United, or we're looking at deals that are unlikely, maybe like Bastoni, maybe like Jurrien Timber, maybe Sven Botman's the better option. I mean, who would you rather have? Let me know in the chat. Who would you rather have? Would you rather have Sven Botman, or would you rather have Jurrien Timber? you could argue that Botman's a way more traditional centre-back. I know a lot of people have got issues with Timber and his height and how would he be able to adapt to the physicality of the Premier League. And if it was Timber against, say, these larger centre forwards, they're going to just bully him and then we're going to have trouble. And 5 games in, 10 games in, we're going, we can't play Timber at centre-back. He's just going to get bullied. He's going to get thrown around. Would you rather have Botman? And maybe it would be an easier adapting process for him. Maybe he might be the better option than Jurrien Timber. It would appear that Timber is still the first choice of Erik ten Hag, certainly, because he knows the player. He's worked with him. He's a younger player, so you could argue there's more room to develop there, and he could have a longer Manchester United career. But as I mentioned at the top of the show, we're in this position at this point. We just can't afford to wait around for every player. We can make an exception. We can make an exception for one player maybe this summer. Maybe that will be Frankie de Jong. Maybe that is the one player that we're going, okay, we're going to be in a saga because it's Manchester United and it's the summer transfer window and there's always one saga. But for the other deals, we can't get involved in that. We just can't. Let's have a look and see what you guys are saying in the free seats. Be sure to smash a like. As always, be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. We've got over 500 people watching. We haven't even got 100 likes, Josh. Disgraceful. Let's have a look what you guys are saying. Fred says Botman sounds like some shoes name. Get your Botmans on. David Lee is saying that he would rather have Timber. Fergie's son said, don't think Donny van der Beek got called up to the Holland team, Owen. Probably not, most likely. Also, he's coming back off injury as well. Downey says, I agree with you, Owen. We don't get the players we want. These are all rumours to hike up the players' price tags. I think referring to the Bastoni situation there. Jack says, from Ajax as well. Yes. Starlord says, players just use Manchester United as a bargaining chip for new contracts or other transfers. Ed T says, rather have Gvardiol. We're going to talk about him in a second as well, who I've seen rumblings about recently. Yes, we are going to touch on that as well. What else have we got here? Kay says, I have no clue who Botman is. That's the other thing as well. And it must be said that, and you're not alone in that, because sometimes United, well, just in general in transfer season, you do get linked to players, and you just go, I have no idea who they are, and you have to look them up. But that's the transfer window in itself, isn't it? That's the transfer window. I do want to talk about Alejandro Garnacho. Now, obviously, you could argue a bit of a breakout season for him this past year. I used that term somewhat loosely because he has made his Manchester United first team debut, came on as a sub. Obviously had the great Youth Cup final where he scored 2 goals, and he's been with the Argentina setup, and he's training with Ronaldo and Messi at the same time, and there's a lot of social media talk about him, and it remains to be seen really what happens to him this season. Is he going to be more involved in the Manchester United first team setup under Erik ten Hag? Is he going to go out on loan? What's the situation? Well, this is an interesting one because reports out of Italy are saying that Juventus would like to sign Alejandro Garnacho when his Manchester United contract expires in 2023, like they did with Paul Pogba. Now, it's interesting because I believe it was Faz and myself were talking about this a couple of weeks ago, saying that does he deserve a new contract? And at the time, we were sort of saying, no, you don't want to have United sort of just gifting out these contracts for, the young players, putting them on big wages, etc., etc. But when you've got a year left, you have to. You have to. He's too much of a talent, clearly, for us to lose him on a free again. The Paul Pogba saga, just look at that Paul Pogba saga of a player that was at United, came through the academy, didn't get the opportunities he felt like he, maybe deserved or the opportunities he wanted at the time, leaves on a free, goes to Juventus, proves himself, we buy him back for 100 million, and then 6 years after the fact, we lose him on a free again. Now, I'm not saying that will happen with Alejandro Garnacho, obviously, but we shouldn't be in the business of losing our best players on a free. Forget these people that have just left in the summer, like Pogba, like Lingard, like Mata, like Matic, whatever. Par for the course. If anything, that is just a shining example of how bad we've been when it comes to contracts over the past decade, of handing them out, big wages, not being able to sell them because the wages are so big. Ideally, all of those players you would have sold a year ago, 2 years ago, because you would have said their contracts are running down, let's make some money out of this. We weren't even able to do that. So when it comes to Garnacho, We've got to. And how do you sell? We're talking about persuading people recently. How do you sell to Garnacho, sign a new deal here because your future is best with us? And the way you do that is you say he's going to play. If you're Erik Ten Hag, we're talking about Ten Hag persuading Frankie de Jong to join Manchester United or persuading any of these players to join the club. He's got to persuade Garnacho to stay. He's got to say, look, I saw you. I watched you in that Youth Cup final. I saw you score your goals. Cristiano Ronaldo's still here. You love Cristiano. Cristiano's giving you match balls and Cristiano's, mentoring you. You're best off staying here. But make no mistake, Juventus, they're the club that's being linked to Garnacho in this story. But make no mistake, there will be plenty of clubs interested in signing Alejandro Garnacho on a free next year. 100%. Because, again, they would have seen the buzz as well. And also, there are plenty of clubs that have far superior scouting networks or recruitment networks than we do. So I'm sure they're very aware of the situation with Garnacho. In fact, I wouldn't even be shocked or surprised if some of these clubs are talking to intermediaries of Garnacho already, going, they've got a year left. What's the situation at United? Is he happy there, or is he going to be playing? Because if he signed with us in a year's time, he'd definitely be playing. It could be quite difficult to get into the Manchester United starting 11, new manager, top players, big rebuild. I don't really know if a young player wants to really get involved in that. Opportunities limited. United need to sort that out, and they need to sort it fast. Absolutely. Because, make no mistake, can I see in a year's time or in 6 months' time, forget a year, in 6 months' time, can I see, he still hasn't signed a new contract? What's going on there? And historically, this is where United fall short, because even if they get the deal done and Garnacho does put pen to paper and signs a new deal, it might be for some inflated wages, because let's face it, Garnacho and his agents, they've got United. They have got them, because there is a talented player there. There is a player that's got buzz about him, and there are clubs that are interested. And they know United are desperate, because how many people do we have? Like Garnacho, we go, I tell you what, he could really be something. How many people have we got that, plenty of people, you're seeing all these clips when he's playing for the under-21s and scoring these goals, and you're going, oh, that's a player. So United have to get that deal done. And again, it has to be to Erik Ten Hag to really convince him that, one, he should stay, but also he's going to be playing and he's going to have a part to play this season. He's got 12 months to do it. And it's one thing to say it, it's another to do it as well. Because he can say to Garnacho, sign the contract, you're going to be playing at Manchester United, don't worry about it. But if he's not playing, if it gets to January, if it gets to March of next year, and he still hasn't played that many games, he would say, I wish I had the button. You lied to me. Yeah? You all laughed at me. All that kind of stuff. That would be the situation. So keep an eye out when it comes to Garnacho, and fingers crossed we get that one done. Let's talk about, I was nervous about this pronunciation. I'm going to go with Josko Gvardiol from RB Leipzig. I mentioned that this was going to be the centre-back view, the defender view this morning, because we've been linked to, as I mentioned, Bastoni, Botman. We're also linked to Gvardiol from RB Leipzig. And then again, similar-ish kind of profile to the other players that we've spoken about this morning. Obviously, the age is a little bit lower. So instead of 23 or 22 years of age, we're talking about 20 years of age here. Of course, currently at RB Leipzig. Again, plays as a centre-back. Can also play a little bit as a left-back as well, but primarily as a centre-back. The reported fee, and again, there are plenty of clubs interested in this player, is reported to be around 30 million, but could be a little bit more, a little bit less. Other clubs that are interested in him are your Spurs and Chelsea. He's highly rated across Europe as an up-and-comer with great potential. Again, and I know I say this of every player, and I do apologize, but there are some proper clubs there interested in him, in Spurs and Chelsea. And when I say proper clubs, I mean clubs that can get deals done and can snap up young players fast. As I spoke about yesterday with Darwin Núñez, you shouldn't rate a player or judge a player's ability or quality based on the other clubs that are interested. So just because, in the Núñez situation, just because Liverpool want Darwin Núñez, we shouldn't go, he must be great. I had my doubts, but Liverpool are good, and their recruitment's really good, so he must be good. But when you do have those other clubs interested, it tends to mean that there is smoke to that fire. And certainly, again, that would be a profile of player that I would be interested in us going for. You could argue the concern would be at the age of 20 in a Manchester United back four that has underperformed massively over the course of the last year. Would he be ready for that step up, or would that be a centre-back which you would say, actually, you know what, we kind of need to bed him in. We need to bed him in, and he's going to take a bit of time to adapt. And do Manchester United necessarily have that time required to have a player come in that is going to be adapting? Do we have that patience? Because if that's our centre-back signing this summer, Gvardiol, and that's not to say he's not going to play by any stretch of the imagination, because he would play games, but is he going to come in and is he going to be our first choice starting centre-back? I'm not sure if he would be. And if that's just a player that's going to develop a little bit and is going to slowly bed him into the side, that means, once again, we're stuck with the centre-back pairing that is Harry Maguire and Raphael Varane, or Lindelof and Varane. And I don't say about Varane as, you know, a bad player, certainly, but I say it as a player that's most likely going to miss at least a third of the season. It's inevitable. It's always going to happen. We saw it last season. We saw it in the postseason with his game for France, and he had to pull out of that for injury. Every time he goes on international duty, he gets injured. So if Gvardiol was the signing, our centre-back signing this summer, that would be my one concern of, is he ready to go right now? Is he ready to go completely right now? You know, if we were signing two centre-backs this summer, if we were signing, say, a Botman and a Gvardiol, then I would say, okay, that is promising. But as I mentioned at the top of the show, I'm almost uncertain with how many centre-backs we were signing this summer. Absolutely, we probably need more than one, but I think it's likely we only sign one this summer. Taking a step away from some of the transfer news before we wrap things up here, I do want to talk about Louis van Gaal, because every time it's the international break or an international period of games, and Louis van Gaal's press conferences, you know, talk about what you will at Manchester United and his regime, his tenure, and the football and the boring football, but he is box office. You can't argue he is not box office. And his press conferences at United were great. Some of his quotes are great. And as the Dutch national team coach, obviously he's asked about United a lot because of his experience there. And now Erik ten Hag being the Manchester United manager, and several players from the Dutch national team, or Dutch players just in general, being linked to Manchester United. So he was asked about the leadership team at Manchester United, because, of course, previously it said about United that we're a commercial club and not a football club. And Erik ten Hag said he had spoken to Louis van Gaal about this at his film premiere, and they'd had those discussions. And whilst he took Van Gaal's advice on board, he makes his own decision. I make up my own mind, and he has, obviously, because he's the Man United manager. But Van Gaal was asked about the leadership structure at Manchester United, about the people above him whilst he was there. Because, of course, he said some very, very, very critical things about Ed Woodward, and rightfully so, because let's face it, Ed Woodward's tenure at Manchester United was a disaster, a decade of pure failure, a decade of just mismanagement and poor decisions, poor recruitment, poor negotiating, the club falling into a state of disrepair when it came to facilities. I mean, just list it all of Ed Woodward's disastrous reign as Manchester United CEO. So obviously there's been a change when it comes to that, with Richard Arnold becoming the new chief executive and John Murtough now the football director at the club. So this is what Louis van Gaal had to say, quote, "There is now a new leadership at Manchester United. It was Woodward, and now it is Richard Arnold, and that can make the difference. So we have to wait and see. He has a lot of confidence, so who am I to say something about that?" And I was actually somewhat taken aback by that, by Louis van Gaal, because, again, he clearly has his feelings about Manchester United. I don't think he's ever really criticised in his post-United career the United fans or anything like that. His biggest gripe is with Ed Woodward and with those people above him, the Glazers, and rightfully so. It should be, right? This guy had a 3-year contract, and they sacked him after the second year after winning the FA Cup. Was it working out completely for him at United? Maybe not, but you know, he said what a lot of fans have said, that it was, you know, it's a banker running a football club. It's not a football person running the football club, and that's why Manchester United are failing because of that. And I found it quite surprising that he was almost very complimentary about Richard Arnold. Well, I say complimentary for Louis van Gaal, but he was slightly complimentary about, the new leadership structure. And it is true. And I know we don't want to give them the benefit of the doubt because they don't deserve it. And you could argue with John Murtough that it hasn't got off to the best start because Ralph Rangnick was his first appointment and that didn't work out. But as a lot of fans are saying, that wasn't Ralph's fault. I don't know who could have came into that Manchester United team last season and fixed that mess. So I am reserving judgment, it must be said, for Richard Arnold and John Murtough until the end of the summer. I think come the end of the summer, that's when you can really criticise for a lack of work or a lack of whatever it may be, recruitment. Or if we are just in a complete mess by, say, October, we barely signed anyone, or the players we have signed are a disaster, Erik ten Hag hasn't worked out, then you can go to John Murtough and say, what are you doing? Because it's not working out. Then you can really put that anger there. But as Louis van Gaal says, you never know. You have to wait and see. Finally, before we wrap things up, I mentioned this was going to be the defender view, the centre-back view. The defender we have been linked with recently, of course, is Pau Torres. And it has been reported by Sky Sports over there in Italy that Tottenham are working on a deal for Pau Torres. So it feels like every centre-back we've been linked with here, Tottenham are interested in as well, but they're clearly in the market for a centre-back as well. I was quite surprised by this because all of the reports we had heard about Pau Torres is that he's actually very content. He's very happy being at Villarreal, and it looked more and more likely that he was going to stay at Villarreal this summer and not go to Manchester United. So the only crux of that deal, by all accounts, is that Lo Celso might be involved in that deal. Maybe that's why it kind of forces Villarreal's hand a little bit. But also, this is still a defender that has to want to leave the club. So it looks definitely less likely that we're not going to be getting Pau Torres this summer. One, because he doesn't really want to leave the club and he doesn't want to join United, but also because Tottenham are interested as well. But as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I think the most likely scenario is that Tottenham do get the Bastoni deal done when it comes to us and our centre-back signings. I do think we will sign a centre-back this summer. I still think the majority of the chances are that it will be Jurrien Timber. If not, I do think Sven Botman is probably going to be an alternative. But as I mentioned before, alternatives aren't a bad thing. That at least shows United are at least being somewhat proactive and saying, what, you're not interested, you don't want to come? Fine, we'll go elsewhere. The one saga we're committing to this summer is Frankie de Jong, because that's the signing that Erik ten Hag wants. That's the signing that he is desperate for, and he's willing to wait, and he's going to do his very best to persuade over and over again. But we'll have to wait and see. As I mentioned, guys, be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. Got over 600 people watching, less than 170 likes. Let's see if we can get up to at least 200 before we wrap things up here. See what you guys are saying in the free seats as well. Fergie-son saying, have a blessed day. Ahmad says, will you be watching Miss Marvel on Disney Plus, Owen? I will. I was having this discussion with Josh earlier. I can't say that I'm very familiar with the source material with Miss Marvel. No spoilers, obviously, but I don't think they're going the proper actual comic book route for that, because it's technically an Inhuman. But I don't think they're going that, because Inhumans don't exist in the MCU at the moment, kind of. They're on the move. So, they're on the moon. I thought you said the move. I was like, where are they moving to? They're on the moon, yes. There was that really bad Inhuman show. People forget, actually. Was it Phase 3? There was meant to be an Inhumans film, and there wasn't. And they scrapped it. What did they scrap it for? I can't remember what they scrapped it for, but there was meant to be an Inhumans film. Yeah, they turned it into a series that was on ABC in America, and it was rubbish. It was really, really bad, which is a shame, because I've read some of the Black Bolt comics, and they're not actually that bad. But that is one of those ones, isn't it, that you've really got to get it right, because there are going to be people looking at that going, that Inhuman stuff is weird. But if they get it right, it can be really good. Only 14 likes to go till 200. I'm going to do what we and KG did last night. I will stay until we get to that 200 number. No Obi-Wan spoilers as well, because me and Josh are going to watch that in a minute. So if you dare, I will storm off set. I'm not having that. But what I did see, actually, and this isn't a spoiler, but I did see that, like, on the Rotten Tomatoes thing, that I think it was like the overall series so far was at like 87, but the audience score was like 50%. What's wrong with people? I was talking about this the other day. Why can't Star Wars fans, why are they angry? Why are Star Wars fans so angry about everything? Canon. Nah, forget the canon. You know, just enjoy it. The last episode was great. Nothing wrong with new Star Wars stuff. Granted, okay, I'll talk about the sequels. Yeah, they were shit. And that's fine. But, so angry. Some people so angry. And I know whilst I'm saying this, I'm now getting angry. But, I'm seeing all these memes. You know when you go on like Facebook or whatever, and there's like Princess Leia in episode 4 where she's like, you fought beside my father in the Clone Wars, and they've added like an entire paragraph because they're sort of grouching about it. Get over it. Get over it. But, yeah. Marlon Clark says, watch it in the studio. We will. We'll have lightsabers and everything. Anyway, we did it. We hit 200 likes. So I'm out of here. Hope you have a good Wednesday, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Peace.